Hey, it's State of State. We got your Nittany Line update. It's a football discussion with Tom and Justin, so kick back and press play.
With former Penn State and NFL defensive back Justin King, I'm Tom Hannafin. This is State of State. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel. For just 99 cents a month, you can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. This podcast is presented by BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. And with baseball in full swing and football season around the corner, BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting. From Major League Baseball to UFC to tennis and NFL futures, BetOnline remains your choice for sports wagering info. In between games, head over to the BetOnline Casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. Head to betonline.ag today and take advantage of their industry-leading VIP program with level-up bonuses and weekly cash boosts. Penn State fans, are you feeling confident that the Nittany Lions can win college football's national championship next season? Lock in your futures bet at betonline.ag today. State of State is presented by BetOnline. The game starts here. State of State is a proud supporter of Blue White Outfitters. Blue White Outfitters was created as a retail shop meant to highlight the confidence, competitiveness, and fearlessness of the elite athletes found throughout the history of Penn State University. Check out their Lockdown U and Lawn Boys merchandise today. All sales from Blue White Outfitters directly benefit Penn State student athletes. Also, official State of State merchandise is available now. Support the show and grab State of State t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and more. Visit www.bluewhiteoutfitters.com today.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to State of State. I'm Tom Hannafin. He's Justin King. Today, we're reacting to Penn State's opportunity at Big Ten Media Days earlier on this week in Las Vegas. James Franklin, I think, very appropriately pointed out, why in the world are these happening in Las Vegas as opposed to Indianapolis or Chicago? And it's the money as opposed to the actual sense, S-E-N-S-E. So a lot of interesting stuff that we can take from this. Zakee Wheatley, Nick Dawkins, Drew Allar, and James Franklin all representing Penn State football at Big Ten Media Days. I'm going to get into a bevy of quotes and things to take away from this. My biggest takeaway, Justin, and I want to get your thoughts on this, is that I believe everybody, maybe with the exception of James Franklin, and there were a million different interviews. So if I missed something, Franklin and Allar were on Colin Cowherd's show on Fox Sports. So there's a lot of different media outlets that spoke to all these players and Franklin. But just about all of them said, we came back because we want to win Big Ten championships and national championships. The reason that people come to Penn State is to win Big Ten championships and win national championships. You and I have been talking about it for a minute, is that now it's like, okay, that messaging is out there. And these guys, these veterans, these seniors are openly talking about coming back to pursue a national championship. And granted, Drew Allar pointed it out. James Franklin pointed it out. Penn State was arguably a drive away from playing for a national championship last year. So it's a reasonable thing. But to hear this messaging come outright from players and coaches is certainly different under James Franklin. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I think it's the elephant in the room. You almost can't ignore it to an extent. You know what I mean? Because it's in this day and age, guys coming back for their fourth year, not transferring. Like it seems like an intentional effort to stick together for a purpose, right? Like, I mean, obviously they're making money in college and things of that nature now, but the way that they've been building and constructing their roster, even at Penn State, I think they've been leading with people that want to be at Penn State. In an era that's super transactional, I think this is one of the most authentic things that James has said when he was talking about keeping the relationship amongst the players transformative and not transactional. I think that's sometimes talking points, but knowing James Franklin and how they built that program, I think it's actually real and sometimes contradictory to how some fans want things to be, where it's like, hey, why don't we do this or spend money? It's like, no, this is kind of how it's built. So, I mean, from the philosophy that implemented in this crazy NIL era, I think we're seeing like the fruits of his labor and like the mentality of having stability within a program where all the guys are there for a unified reason to win a championship. So I don't think you can avoid it, but I also think this has been built up for the 3-4 years with this group of guys.
In the words of Jim Knowles, everybody's pulling in the same direction. And James Franklin was quick to point out the alignment from Dr. Ben Pudi to athletic director Pat Kraft to himself. So that has been consistent for a few years now. I want to get to a handful of James Franklin quotes here. We'll get to some things that Drew Allar said, Zakee Wheatley, Nick Dawkins, etc. James Franklin said, quote, "This is the best combined personnel I think we've ever had at Penn State during his tenure. I'm talking about players and staff." Would you agree with that? Granted, we're on the outside looking in, but you have some experience with this.
Say the best talent.
The best combined personnel I think we've ever had at Penn State during Franklin's tenure. That is what he was saying. I'm talking about players and staff.
Yes, yeah, I would probably agree, especially when you talk about the depth and age of the team, because I think that's probably one of his oldest teams that he's had since he's been at Penn State, where in terms of guys being there the whole, all the way there. Saquon was only there for 3 years. Miles was there only for 3 years. These guys were like year 4. So that extra year of maturity amongst your top star players, and then you're bringing in top tier coaches throughout the program. I've said this multiple times. I think Penn State probably has one of the best coaching staffs in the country. Like with no bias, like just actually objectively evaluating the guys and what they've been producing. It's actually, I've said it before, it's one of James's greatest strengths as a head coach is putting staffs and personnel together, to be completely honest. And so, yeah, I definitely think that's an accurate statement.
Before James Franklin's appearance at Big Ten Media Days, Penn State announced a record-breaking fundraising year. Penn State says it has raised nearly $165 million from nearly 20,000 donors through athletics and the Nittany Lion Club. So, you and I have talked so much about the looming $20.5 million, quote, cap for the entirety of athletics. A lot of that money you can point towards has gone towards the Beaver Stadium renovation fund, and that renovation is ongoing. But still, that is an athletic department wide push. And we've talked about it, everybody going all in on football for 2025. How do you feel about that number in the grand scheme of college football?
Well, I mean, they're talking about the Nittany Lion Club. What was that number again? You said 125?
$164.9 million. Yeah, about
that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, think about the capital projects and things of that nature. I think that's a high number, and it kind of gets, I want to conflate it with like NIL, that 20 million and collectives and all those different type of things, because they've been raising money like for capital projects for a long time. So be able to get 164 million, I don't know if that's great, but I mean, I don't really feel any way about it. I think that's what you need to do in order to compete in this landscape of college football in terms of the support around the revenue sharing money that goes to the players. I think that's what's going to be those soft assets when you're recruiting players to come to the school. Like, hey, this is how we're built in from an infrastructure standpoint, not just giving you money in a transactional, but we have an infrastructure to make it transformational for a 17, 18, 19-year-old kid. So I think those type of funds are needed. But let's see what happens.
James Franklin went into a myriad of topics, fielded a lot of questions from Ohio State reporters. I thought that was interesting. Ohio State, perhaps, and maybe just as clicks on their website, that sort of thing. But I think there's a legitimate chance of Penn State contending for the national championship this year. And it's gotten to a point now, Justin, where people assume Penn State should make the college football playoff. And part of that is the expansion from 4 to 12, but it seems plausible on a regular basis. There are a lot of people expecting Ohio State, Oregon, and Penn State to represent the Big Ten at the very least in the college football playoff. Franklin was asked about, that hype, that buzz, and he was like, I don't understand preseason rankings. He was like, these don't make any sense. They don't mean anything. The only ones that matter are the ones at the end of the year. I couldn't agree more. I know that a lot of college football fans' heads might explode, but I would love to see the ranking system done away with. I understand from a TV system, it's like when you see 5 versus 9, you're like, ooh, that's important. It's like, okay, we're getting into this era where no conference is equal to the other and no team is quite the same. It's very subjective and opinionated. I would love to see the ranking system go away nationally and maybe just keep it to, hey, you're number 1 in the SEC because of your schedule or because of your win-loss record. Same thing in the Big Ten. It could be a little confusing there, but I personally hate preseason rankings. What do you think?
Yeah, I do too. And I've come to the conclusion, or come to the acceptance of the part of the business is to educate the fans or get them to talk about something, right? In this July, August, you see all the podcasters giving out their top lists and ranking. Oh, guys, because there's a level of educating and engaging the fans to get them excited for the season. So there's a part of the business and the enterprise value when you talk about media rights and the money coming down. You have to drum up interest from these crazy fan bases. You know what it's like, drawing up storylines in wrestling to make sure everybody's like riled up to see what's going on. I think it's the same thing, and it's something that we can't get away from. But I do agree with you that I would like to see some formalization or that step forward, like the NFL. Like there isn't a ranking. It's like, yo, this is how many games you won versus the team that you play, and this is where you stand. But then that means there should be a commission that's setting the schedules if that happens. Like the schools can no longer set their schedules if that's going to be the case. Because I think that's where you get a little bit of competitive imbalance when these coaches are finagling the schedules and doing things of that nature.
James Franklin went on to talk, obviously, heavily about his starting quarterback, Drew Allar, who was entering his final season at Penn State. He listed off some statistics, which James Franklin, Penn State football, are very good about pointing out on a regular basis. Said, quote, since 1956, Drew Allar is one of two quarterbacks with 800 plus completions, 50 plus touchdowns, and fewer than 10 interceptions. Whether you like Drew Allar or not, I saw some conversation with Brandon Walker on Barstool Sports where he was supporting Drew Allar and his counterpart was saying Drew Allar's not very good. It's just like some of these numbers are eye-popping, and you do have to give Drew Allar his flowers. And I think there's a lot of people, you and I talking about the emotional equity, even in his interview with the press, and Drew Allar's super even keel. He says all the right things. He has his talking points. I'm not saying he's disingenuous, but he just doesn't give you bulletin board material. He's just very, very straight up and down. James Franklin went on to say, we need more than Tyler Warren making plays for him. And naturally, there's a lot of questions of, okay, what's going to be their wide receiver? Are they going to fix the passing game? All that sort of stuff. And I think James brings up a fair point. You need more than one guy, one unicorn making plays. Do you feel more comfortable about the weapons at Allar's disposal this year than you have in any of his previous years?
I think, again, I really lean on experience matters. When guys have seen different situations, you can react, you can play in a little more free zone versus growing up and learning and having expectations. So once that snap counting experience is really important, I think that happens. And I have a message for like all the people that like hate on Drew Allar. It really irks me out and pisses me off because it seems like it's like, I gotcha. Like where it's like, okay, there's this highly touted guy where it's like, we can point out this one game. I was on some dude, I'm not going to say his thing here. He was talking about, they had a Drew Allar thing coming out next year and he was talking about just a Notre Dame game. And I'm just like, how are like people within the sports space, whether credible fans or casual fans, not aware? I mean, you can have your opinion about a player, but just kind of to point out the outlier negatives is kind of weird. And then to use that to judge the whole story, it's just disingenuous, and it shows people's lack thereof, like expertise or just emotional piece of a fan. Cause like it gets under my skin a little bit. I'm not really that type of person, but I'm like, I don't see like the disdain or how bad somebody is, like not in Drew. I'm like, you're talking about a top 10 quarterback. So it's like, where's the, like, I guess we don't understand the evaluation process, but whatever.
It's strange because like no one's going to argue, yeah, he had a bad game against Notre Dame. He's had tough games against the bigger opponents. So I think that's where the sticking point is. And I think a lot of this stuff kind of, it's personal because he's not a big personality and because he's very laid back. And if he were a bigger personality, maybe he would be even more likable or he'd be even more hateable. You don't know, but he's right in the middle. So I think that leaves room for interpretation. And he is polarizing, which is amazing because he just seemed like the nicest kid. And it's
I was say, is he polarizing though? Because like I've been around players that are polarizing. I don't think he is. Like he's somebody that like you should be like rooting for. If there's a benefit of the doubt, like I'm like, oh, like where's the disconnect? But it comes down to people who are losers, and sometimes when you see like, he's a number one quarterback, we gotta find something wrong with him. And I don't even like taking that stance a lot of times, but I get irked out when people that have some level of cachet in the football space say stupid things, and I digress.
So to the point about fan interaction with Drew Allar, he was asked about the effect of sports gambling, and Allar said he's had people complain to him, make Venmo payment requests, and people back home tell him that they bet on his odds to win the Heisman. People bug his family and his girlfriend. He's also, doing these interviews. He's being asked by Ohio media outlets because he's from Ohio. Obviously, the Ohio State connection that we talked about in terms of that playing them this year, just in general, being within the conference. But he's being asked about, hey, how would it feel to be drafted by the Cleveland Browns, and who's your favorite Cleveland Browns player, and all those sorts of things. And the reality is starting to set in for me is that the national pressure that's going to be put on him will be far more significant than I think we realize, because you're answering questions about something that could occur to you in April of 2026, in July of 2025. You know what it's like to go through the draft process, be in that final year, be looking forward to things. How in the world do you compartmentalize, especially with the hype and expectations for this year?
I mean, he's been groomed or conditioned to do that. Like, to an extent, like that 1-0 mentality. Like, he was the number one quarterback coming out of high school. He's been playing quarterback. So I mean, he's gone through the fire and he's still standing. And if you're around him, he's not an angry guy. He's not bitter. He's not like, 'cause I'm speaking from a person that when the fans did that to me, like, probably didn't want to come too close to me around the campus, because like I was probably going to try to bite your face off. But because like getting that type of stuff, and I've been around Drew and he's not like that. Like, he's still like positive. He's working. He's doing his thing. So I'm like, man, that's what's up. So like, he's got mental toughness. He's built to play this position at Penn State, and he has all the physical tools. You just kind of wait for these assets to mature, not to, dehumanize them in a sense, but like you wait for them to mature and you give them chance to mature. I mean, I'm a Drew Allar fan, but I mean, you can have preferences in quarterbacks and how you want to do it, but like just the way that he approaches the development process and like his business, I just respect it.
I completely agree. He went on to talk about why he returned. He said it came down to, I want to be a better football player. And I think he did make the right decision coming back to Penn State, and that there are clearly things from last year that are like, hey, he could work on his game. He could go to the NFL draft and potentially be a top 10 pick, but he could go and be somebody that you are looking at as a solid, locked in, whatever, franchise quarterback, all that sort of stuff. He said, there's a lot of things I want to accomplish as a team. Went on to say, that competing and thinking about the national championship, he said, quote, it's the standard for us now. We want to be in the playoffs every year. That's why we came to Penn State. We want to be able to compete for Big Ten titles and compete for national championships. To have that be the standard now is what we want to do, and exceed those standards this year. It's fascinating to me because this is another year since the last national championship where people are feeling like Penn State could actually pull it off. And it's been nearly 40 years. The fan base has consistently expected Big Ten titles and national titles, whether that's justifiable or not based on the talent of the roster at hand. Do you feel like that was always the standard when you were a player? And do you feel like that's been maintained this entire time? Or has it just been win as much as you possibly can? I don't know how to phrase it exactly.
Winning a national championship or winning a Big Ten championship, is that kind of been the
both? Yeah.
So it's interesting you say that, because like when I came to Penn State, I mean, I wanted to win. Probably had more of an individual mindset, but it was like, yo, how can I impact the bottom line the most? Like, where can I do that the most? And it just so happens that we had the delta of wins from the previous year, or success, was enormous. So like that was like the W for us, or how we were looking at it. Yes, I think all of our guys wanted to win a national championship. I came into a spot where it was like, oh, we're trying to be the reasons that we win a national championship. So I say that to say, I don't know if the standard has been win a national championship, because they haven't won a national championship since 1986, right? So it's kind of hard to say that that's the standard. I think the standard right now is winning the games that you're supposed to win, and every 3-4 years you take a run at the national championship. I think that's how they've been built. I think that's how just historically Penn State has been, if we're going to be objectively honest. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think you just got to know your identity and lean into that when you talk about roster constructing and building and doing all those different type of things. And I think that's what James Franklin and his staff has been exceptional at doing.
I mentioned Zakee Wheatley and Nick Dawkins were at Big Ten Media Days. Zakee Wheatley, kind of echoing some of the things that were said by Drew Allar, said, quote, coming to Penn State, I came here to win Big Ten championships, winning national championships. You get it every year. That's the expectation. Whatever happens, happens, but that's how I'm going into the season. Again, Jim Knowles arrives and he talks about outwardly being like, my goal is to help Penn State win a national championship in 2025. And prior to that, it was the 1-0 mentality. James Franklin would, reprimand's a strong word, but he'd get guys in line if they were like, yeah, we're trying to win the Big Ten title. Yeah, we're trying to make the playoffs. Yeah, we're trying to win a national championship. It was always that 1-0 mentality. To hear that from the top down on the roster of veterans, seniors being like, yeah, we're here to win championships, I find it fantastic. It is that thing about this program and James Franklin and all that stuff of coming very close, but yet so far. And now you've put all this messaging out into the universe. So granted, it's not been said in a terribly controversial way, and most people agree that Penn State should be able to contend for the national championship this year. But you know what it means to be around great senior leadership, great veteran leadership. How impactful is that for this team in particular as you look at the roster, the nucleus?
I think leadership is extremely important. I think that's what set our 2005 team apart in terms of leadership and the fire that those guys have been through, like things that you can experience and that it takes time, regardless of how talented as a freshman or whatever talented guys are. Like there's something about being at a school and leadership. And I wanted to touch on a point that you said where the older guys are saying that they're here to win a national championship. We got to remember in this day and age of retention being more important than recruiting, to retain these guys, you have to give them something that's bigger than a little bit of, hey, we'll give you some money. So like, I think the messaging has been, hey, let's do something special and come back and win a national championship. So I think that's why you hear the echo coming out of the players, because I think there's been retention meetings where that's what's been echoed to the coaches to get them to stay. You know what I mean? Or, I mean, the talk about championship talk or the Patriots talk, if we get into like that salary cap talk where it's like, hey,
Right.
How do you get people to take a little less money and get, championships, right? So I'm saying that seems like the philosophy that they're moving along with. But with that being said, you're injecting that in the right leadership of the team that has proven to be productive on the field and gone through the fires to an extent of the past couple of years. So I think it kind of aligns, but I really believe it's based out of this new age of retention and selling these guys that, hey, you can come back to win a national championship and immortalize yourself to an extent.
Speaking of someone who's been through the fire, I believe he's been at Penn State for 14 years. Penn State's senior center, Nick Dawkins, was also a part of Big Ten Media Days. Listen, like I'm so encouraged by the veteran leadership on this team, as we've talked about. It's on both sides of the ball, but there's a lot more of it on the offensive side of the ball. Just looking at the offensive line with Dawkins, Ioane, Shelton, Donko, now Rucci, who's more of a seasoned player, but is going into his second season with the football team. The running backs, been there a long time. Wide receivers who may not have been guys that have played for this program for a while, but guys with experience in college football. There's just depth and experience, and it just feels like a lot of guys who are not going to blink when things are challenging. And especially the one thing I love about Nick Dawkins in particular is, there was a lot of conversation during Big Ten Media Days of his work in the community, and he won the Werfel Trophy last year for his work in the community. In this day and age, and your experience with LIG Sports Group, how rare and how difficult is it for the average student athlete, college football player, to be fully committed to giving back to their community when there are the shiny objects of, hey, like what you want to pursue on the field, what you want to pursue in the pros, NIL, revenue sharing, like all these things that just didn't exist at one point. What Nick Dawkins does is, unfortunately, it's an outlier, but it's so special.
It is special. I think when you have a mission or something that's touched your heart early in your life and you have a chance to use NIL to give back to that cause, I think it's a beautiful thing. What I don't like is almost guilting players into, like 17, 18-year-old players, to kind of cosplay as professionals and kind of give their money away out of a guilt thing. I think if it's coming from your heart and you want to do something, or there's a mission that hits close to home, I love it. There's a level of these athletes need to also build a foundation for themselves across the board. So I'm saying great for Nick Dawkins. And I think he has some unique experiences growing up that has shown him different ways to impact that. And I think that's an awesome thing. I think more players should do that and have an opportunity to. I just think there comes with a level of exposure to do that the right way. I'm just kind of touchy when I hear like fans or older people, of a certain demographic telling younger guys, give your money back. And they just started getting some money. And it's like, then they'll laugh at them when they come up broke in a couple of years. So there's a level of steps to being able to give back. But I think it's great that Nick Dawkins does that. I think it's great that he's been creative in doing it. Cause be clear on what I'm saying. It doesn't have to be money, right? It could be time. It could be the logistics and the relationships that you're building to impact those different things. I think that is a tactical and strategic thing that a lot of these guys just don't know how to do besides giving money. So if there's more things in place for them to help do it, I think Syracuse does a good job of like organizing things where you can have a cause to go. I mean, I'm not sure exactly what Penn State does in that space because a lot of the guys that come in there have that type of character where they want to be involved in something. You know what I mean? So I think it's a great thing that Nick Dawkins does. I just sometimes I tread lightly with, some of these younger players that take on a little bit more responsibility than they need to.
I'm very impressed by this nucleus of seniors leadership. Nick Dawkins, I think, is just such a bright future in the National Football League. Also, he's a big personality. I think he's going to be doing something on, in the broadcast media space at some point in his life and in his career. The biggest thing I've always experienced in any walk of life is that time is the most valuable thing that you can give. So I think that's
Yes.
an appropriate point to make there. Speaking of time, we are counting down the time because on Wednesday, July 30th, training camp begins. And then a month later, Penn State opens up the season at home against Nevada. Tell us what you think in the comment section of what some of the things you've heard from Penn State's Big Ten Media Day opportunity this past Wednesday. A lot of things that we weren't able to get to here today. They spoke to a variety of media outlets. So if there are any points that you guys would like us to hit and extrapolate on, buzz us, and we'll get to that next week here on State of State. But we are so excited to see what starts developing with training camp, starting to get some answers to these position battles heading into Penn State's 2025 campaign.
Thank you all so much for joining us. This episode and our entire library of shows is available now on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel. For just 99 cents a month, you can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. State of State is presented by Bet Online and by Blue White Outfitters.